Hello and good afternoon. We are so happy that you are joining us here today for an interview with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dr. Sara Truebridge. She is just one of the most encouraging and kind people you could possibly meet, and I know that we're in for a real treat getting to interview her, getting to learn about her life experience, her expertise, and the fantastic work that she does in Uganda. A little bit about Sara. She has not one, but two TED Talks. They are incredible. We will link those on our resource page for those of you who are interested in watching those. She also has a wonderful book that I have here with me. Resiliency Begins with Beliefs, which is such an amazing quote. We're going to get into that and what that means to Sara. She's an advisor to Willow, and she works with our team on the ground doing just incredible life-giving work. So Dr. Sara, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you here.
And thank you so much, Kelsey. And before we get started, you have to share what I'm wearing.
Yes. So you are decked out in some amazing jewelry, earrings, bracelets. Can you tell us a little bit about those things?
Well, they were made by some of the women in the program that you are doing, and it's from iSanctuary, if I'm
yes,
right.
That is correct.
And these women who have gone through your self-care and care program have been employed in situation where they are now learning and crafting jewelry, and the jewelry is gorgeous.
It is.
So I just had a delightful time meeting the women and shopping.
We do have fun shopping there, don't we?
Yeah.
And yes, if you want to check out this organization, it's a fantastic partner of Willow's. They're called International Sanctuary, and their brand is called Purpose Jewelry. They sell gorgeous, high-quality jewelry that's made in their projects in Uganda, India, Mexico, and the U.S. So thanks for supporting, Sara. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. I thank them.
So to kick us off, Sara, you became an expert on resilience before the majority of the world was talking about resilience. I would love to know what led to your interest in this topic and why it has been so captivating for you.
Thank you, Kelsey. But I really want to thank you also for inviting me and giving me this opportunity and sharing this time with you and everybody else. First of all, I want to, with all due respect, correct you. I am not an expert. I continually find that the more I know about something, the more I don't know. And I think that even pertains to resilience, the area that I did my research, continue doing research in, my dissertations in that area, but there is always more to learn. And the way I got started, it was kind of interesting. I was taking a class. I took this class called Resilience at UC Berkeley for some graduate work. And I started, they had all these readings, and I'm reading this information on resilience. They gave this word resilience. And as I'm reading it, I started crying. And I just realized that all of a sudden I found a word and a concept that actually articulated something that I was always thinking. You know, I myself have had lived experiences, and I never really considered myself a victim of that. I considered myself someone who got through that. And resilience really focuses on the strengths-based aspect of moving through a lived experience. And that's not to say that it isn't traumatic or that there is a victim component, but after I read about resilience, I was hooked. And one of the things that it just really aligns with my values is that it's strengths-based, and it's more than a concept. It's now the perspective and lens that I have as I move through life. And you're right, it's now a word du jour. Everybody's using the word, and they don't realize that it is based on 50 plus years of longitudinal research, developmental longitudinal research. And I'm walking on the foundation led by so many others.
That's beautiful, Sarah. Your joy and your resiliency is something that really inspires me. And, you know, diving into that a little bit deeper, it's a word that's used a lot. Yeah. It's become super popular, which is great because we do want our schools and our programs that care for people to be strength-based. But I think that sometimes there's confusion around what it actually means. Yeah. And so I would love to know how you describe resilience.
And I really am grateful for you asking that question and giving me the opportunity, because I think that's important, because the word has been so prominently used in so many areas. Here's the simple definition. Resilience, the ability to bounce back from adversity, trauma, stress. Now for the academic 101 component of our talk. The definition that I use, and I'm just going to read it, is the dynamic and negotiated process within individuals, so that's an internal aspect, within individuals and themselves, and between individuals and their environments, for the resources to adapt and define themselves as healthy amidst adversity, trauma, and stress. And so what I want to emphasize there is that resilience draws on internal strengths and the supports that are in our environment. And then there's the theory of resilience it's actually very simple. If you indulge me.
Yes, please.
For 1 minute. This is like this, again, welcome to, you know, my classroom. But this is resilience theory 101. This is a theory of resilience based on research. My mentor, Bonnie Bernard, writes about it. There are basically 4 environments: home, school, community, and peer group. What the resilience talks about is we as human beings all have, it's Maslow's, we all have the same needs: the needs for love, the need for belonging, the need for power, the need, all those things. Resilience theory says that there are 3 major, we call them protective factors, that support resilience. And they are caring relationships, high expectations, and I'm not talking about like high expectation, you know, win something, get something, you know, a high expectation, like a message of stick-to-itiveness, stay with it, you can do this. So caring relationships, high expectations, and opportunities to participate and contribute. Very simply, when people in any one of those 4 environments and those 3 protective factors together are found in any one of those 4 environments, it meets the needs of power, love, belonging. It leads to the strengths, it leads to feeling a sense of self-efficacy, strengths, which then leads to future success, whether it be education, life, business. The most, though, important aspect is that we as a community believe that everyone has the capacity for resilience. Resilience is a process. It's not a trait. If it's a trait, that means some people have it and some people don't. No. Resilience is a capacity everyone has. So instead of asking the question, do you have resilience, which puts it in the concept of a trait, we have to ask ourselves, what is it we can do to tap and support the resilience of others? Because it's in there. And we have to believe in the capacity. It's all about, and that's the name of my book, Resilience Begins with Beliefs. It's the belief of the caregiver or teacher who then transfers and engages the person who has had a lived experience to believe in themselves.
Wow, Sara, you are such an incredible teacher. It's no wonder you have a background.
Yeah, tell that to
in
all my
education.
second graders and all the students in my doctoral programs. We'll see if they agree.
Well, I definitely believe so. And just hearing you speak about this, I think it's clear for people to make the connections, how you ended up working and supporting Willow and our work supporting survivors of human trafficking. And just to give our listeners some background, Sara and I met really serendipitously through a friend of a friend. She was in Uganda. She ended up visiting our programs, and our team just fell in love with her. And when we learned about her expertise, I just jumped on that as quickly as I could. And I've learned so much from Sara. She's really helped us shape our programs to be strength-based. She's helped us to think about even the language that we use in our programs, how we define the population that we work with so that it is strength-based, so that survivors of trafficking from all areas of our program, from every staff member, from every person they encounter, they feel that we do believe in that capacity for resilience, that we believe in them, and our work is to support their journey, tapping into their own resiliency and supporting that as much as we can. So Sara, thank you for all that you've done to support us, and I'm excited to dive into what that is and how you've helped us beyond hours and hours of phone calls with me and time with me, helping me learn so much.
It's mutual. It's so mutual, Kelsey. You know that.
Thank you. So on that note, resilience and strength are words that people often use when describing survivors of trafficking. People will visit our aftercare homes and they're expecting to see kind of sad, somber places. They're not expecting what they do find, which is joy and strength. And you've spent a lot of time with our staff. You've spent time with the survivors in our care. Can you share a little bit from your personal experience of what that has been like for you?
Absolutely. You know, in one word, I want to say the word awesome, but I don't want to say that word like awesome. It's, I am in awe. Every time I'm in the presence of the staff, the survivors, you, I am so humbled and in such awe. And I think you're absolutely right. There is so much joy there in the homes and amongst the women and children. And like I said, you know, that's, awe is just actually sums it all up. And I am just so grateful of the opportunity to be part of that and to be a witness of that. You know, it's so meaningful to me.
Well, I know that your time with our team is always an encouraging one. Our team just feels like they've been built up when you're around, and I thank you so much for that. And so one of the things, Sarah, when we started talking, and I really want to focus on this because a couple lunch and learns ago, Dave Rogers from the Human Trafficking Institute, he shared that a lot of people want to help in this issue of human trafficking. What can I do? What can I do? And he's a former FBI agent, and he had someone call him up who owned a heating and air conditioning company and said, I want to go rescue victims. And he said, well, you don't have the training for that. Why don't you use what you do have the training for to help others? And you are a perfect example of a person who says, hey, I want to help. This is my expertise. This is what I have to offer. How does that fit in with your work? And I just want to encourage people listening that you can do that with all sorts of organizations, not just anti-trafficking organizations. The skills that you have can really make an impact, because we need those skills. We need a huge, diverse set of skills in order to do this work well. And so you've brought your expertise, which I will say, because I see you as an expert on resilience. And you've done a lot of work on self-care.
Yes.
Helping teachers care for themselves. You've done this in the business world. You've done this in the nonprofit world. And at Willow, we have 54 staff working to run our 3 shelters, our legal aid program, our prevention program, and our coalition. They work around the clock. They deal with a lot of secondary trauma. They're around trauma and danger all of the time. And you and I, Sarah, we're familiar with the realities of compassion fatigue and of secondary trauma. How can we prevent compassion fatigue and protect our staff as we care for survivors? Can you speak to that and maybe share some of the ways that you've helped our team do that?
Yeah. I think something that's really important in the work that we all do, and you said it earlier, Kelsey, are the words that we use. And, the difference between victim versus survivor. And, we could spend an hour on that, how the women sometimes come to us as victims from a systemic system, but then through your program, they're on a journey of survivor. And the same about compassion fatigue, where I don't know if you ever prevent it, because the concept of compassion fatigue, it happens because you care. And people who are doing the work, and I'll just talk about human trafficking for now, they're in there because they care. The other thing is, you are constantly hearing stories, and where do those stories go? They go somewhere. And so there's a beautiful quote, and I have it written down, by Rachel Naomi Raymond. It says, the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet.
Wow.
I know, that's powerful. And so I think that the thought that we can engage in this work and not have it affect us, we can't prevent that. What we can do, the first step in helping ourselves, because we're not good to anybody unless we take care of ourselves. It's that oxygen mask metaphor, when you're on a plane, take care of yourself first, then take care of anybody dependent. Mm-hmm. If we don't fill our cup first, we cannot fill the cup of others. And so we have to first and foremost allow ourselves to acknowledge it, that it is happening. We have to give ourselves permission. I think one of the biggest things in terms of when people respond to the work that I do when I come, like when I came to Willow, is I allowed everyone, I gave them permission to feel it and label it. And that way it's not like, oh, I feel so guilty that I'm having difficulty finding empathy. I'm having difficulty, I'm having difficulty relating, or I just need a day off. I can't do this anymore. That's real. And so people need to, the kindness and grace that we give others in the work we do, we first have to give it to ourselves. Mm. And I'm always learning myself. Trust me, I don't have this under control. I am constantly reminding myself of that. And Kelsey, I know with the way that you work and your tendencies, it's something that many of us are constantly navigating.
Yes. It's so true. And one of the things that I've realized is I have to know what my indicators are.
Yes, your triggers, yeah. Absolutely.
If I start having feelings that aren't normal for myself, I realize, oh, wow, I'm getting burnt out.
Exactly. And, while we're on the subject, there is, and this is a great resource. His name's, being a researcher, I will reflect on like I said, on the foundations laid by others. Charles Figley writes a lot about compassion fatigue. And he had, he calls it, I'm going to read this one too, the Green Cross Ethical Guidelines for Standards of Helper Self-Care. And I love this. He says, this is the guidelines. First, do no harm to yourself in the line of duty when helping and treating others. Second, attend to your physical, social, emotional, and spiritual needs as a way of ensuring high quality services for those who look to you for support as a human being.
Wow.
And I want to commend you, Kelsey. You, before it even became the popular thing to do, because we know, especially in this COVID environment, teachers, professionals that are providing care to others, in the human trafficking environment, it is not easy. And I am being asked more and more in the present about this issue of compassion fatigue and self-care. And I want to say kudos to you, because just like with me before resilience became a buzzword, one of the things that I love about you, Kelsey, is your recognition of the need for your staff, from the security folks to the house managers to the caseworkers. Everyone needs to take care of themselves first. And you have always, before this became a thing, you always recognize that, and you've given your staff the support that they need. Now we just have to make sure you get it too. I'll be there, I'll make sure.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for saying that. It's something that's so important to us as an organization. We truly value those who work with the survivors every single day, no matter what that capacity is. And they get into this work because they love it. They're passionate about it. And how awful would it be if we work them so hard that they get burnt out, or if we don't identify their needs and meet their needs. We want them to be able to have the fuel that they need to do their passion, to work in their passion.
And the term compassion fatigue, it happens because you have compassion and you care.
Yeah.
And just so people if they want to dig deeper into this, you know, there are nuances with the terms secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, burnout, compassion fatigue, and there is a wealth of literature that actually is bubbling up to help professionals in all fields that are helping in human service fields.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll be sure any resources that you have, we'll be sure to add those to our new resource page on the website for folks who are interested.
Great.
I'm wondering, Sara, could you just give us a snapshot? You do these workshops with our staff.
Yeah.
You travel all the way to Uganda to pour your love and your knowledge into our team. Could you give us a snapshot of what that looks like?
Yeah. First of all, never feel sorry for me that I'm traveling to Uganda. It's an opportunity that, as a matter of fact, I usually go at least twice a year, and this COVID-19 has put a real monkey wrench in our travels, right?
It sure has.
So for all of the women and participants listening, hi, I miss you, can't wait to see you soon. And all the staff, hi. So what it looks like, I think I'm going to share that by way of some of the things I do, and then a story. Because when I go there, I tell you, I am learning and listening almost more than I'm providing or offering. It is a time filled with joy within me, and I'm surrounded by joy. It's a time, like I said, of really connecting. I think if there's one word that sums up the power of the work that we all do, it's relationships. Mm-hmm. And the power of developing relationships with you, Kelsey, the organization, the staff, the participants, the ability to nurture relationships and establish trust, everything then follows. And so there is joy, and I say joy, not like always laughter. There's joy to me that someone trusts me with their story, and that we can laugh together and that we can cry together. And that's what a relationship is about. And one of my favorite stories, I worked with the staff and did some work with them, and we talked about compassion fatigue. And then I worked and did some work with the survivors. And I remember being on the front porch. This was the day that we were having the picnic, actually, the big picnic. And I was on the front porch, and I was in a role where I was, the women were all in rows, like in chairs. And so we're talking and chatting, and my workshops are very interactive. So we're very interactive, and there's this woman I'm looking out, and as a speaker or presenter, you love for the person who's always nodding their head, smiling back at you. It's like, great, they get it, they're with you, they're supporting you, just like you are now. And this woman just constantly had this beaming smile, did this, and just kept going on. I got done with what my presentation and interaction and activities were. She called me over, and we sat and we just chatted. And we chatted and we laughed for quite a bit of time. Then we all had to go. And then someone on staff came up to me. I don't know if you remember this story. You do. Someone came up to me and said, "Oh my God." I was like, what? What did I do wrong? They said, "She has never talked before. She has never, and I'm like, what? They said, she came and up until now, she has not talked or interacted. And it blew me away, because she, to me, looking out, was the most engaged. She called me over after, and we just were like, boop, 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 boop. It was just an experience after I found out the background, that I was, again, talk about awe. And I was just so grateful for you giving me the opportunity to establish that relationship. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
You've just touched on something that is so close to my heart, and that is, it's the most incredible thing in this line of work to see transformation take place. And it can take a really long time, because those things that you spoke of when laying out this theory of resilience, they're not easy to build. It can take such a long time to believe in yourself, to believe in your own capacity. Survivors of trafficking have, in many situations, been told over and over again that they have no value, that they have no worth, that they can't trust themselves, that they can't trust their instincts. And so that takes a long time to rebuild. And the reality of seeing someone break through that for the first time is just,
it's amazing.
It's just overwhelmingly amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It's you know, I often say, people who know me, I know I have some supporters out there who are listening. Sometimes when you put words to emotions or events, it diminishes them. And I think this is a true example. What you're talking about, Kelsey, is when you actually are witness to someone having a breakthrough, it's indescribable, because it just fills you, you know, it's just, it's amazing.
It really is. And I thank you for sharing that story with us. One thing that I would love to hear and love to share with our listeners are some of the activities and techniques that you use when you do these workshops in Uganda.
Yeah, you know, I'd love to touch upon one that we're engaging in right now during COVID. You know, when I'm there, you know, they're very interactive. We're engaging in telling stories of resilience. We're engaging in identifying words of resilience. But something, it's like, okay, now we're in COVID and we're in lockdown, and Uganda has been very, very strict in the nature of the way they've carried out their lockdown. So when you asked, you know, and I work with one of your staff, Amber and Joylyn, and when you and Lillian and JR, whose interview, if you haven't seen their interview, hi Lillian, hi JR, you guys were amazing. But what Amber and I have come up with, we are doing this process called WOW, Word of the Week. And every morning, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelsey, but every morning, the women and children live in houses. And every morning there is a meeting with the participants in the house. And one of the things that I came up with Amber, we were talking about this. And you mentioned this, one of the most important things is developing a sense of trust amongst each other. And I know in your other interviews, you have mentioned how sometimes when you ask survivors to tell their story, they're not either telling the truth about their story or the complete story. It takes a while to get a sense of trust. So the word of the week, what we did was we gave everyone, first of all, a journal of their own. in that journal, they can write, they can draw, they can create. The word of the week for those in research, we're basing it on Bronfenbrenner's theory, the concentric circles, the macro to the micro. I think I even have something here. Teacher 101.
Yes, the ecologic model. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the self is in the middle. The outside are the rings with the community, and then they get smaller. The community, the organization, the family, etc. So what we did, we kind of put it into phases. The first phase was giving a word and starting big, like the word humanity. That was actually the first word, humanity. Huge. We defined it, we gave the origin, we used it in a sentence, we put it in English, which many people don't realize is the language of Uganda, but then we also translated it into Luganda and some of the languages that people are more familiar with in Uganda. Then they discussed the word, they talked about what it meant to them. The next word after that week was community, and we narrowed it down to family. And then we had the word family, and people were using those words as the Willow family, and using, again, giving definitions, and they would talk about it, and we encouraged them to use it and to create around that word, whether it be music, art, whatever. And then, and Amber has sent me some amazing artwork that people have done, and we're talking about doing this with children as young as 4, so that they can even talk to someone and someone can scribe it. So we started doing that, and people came up. I mean, Amber was telling me, people were like, oh my gosh, I'm loving this. It's giving me a sense of looking forward to the group. There were all sorts of feedback responses that were very positive. The next phase of WOW, word of the week, was then, that's the environment. And like I said, the resilience definition, working from the outside, and then the strengths from within. We started with then identifying strengths. And of course, no surprise here, we started with resilience. And we talked about it, giving the participants, the survivors, the opportunity to label strengths and find and look for those strengths they have within and talk about them. And the other thing we added, this is so cool, and I invite anybody to do, if you're doing this work, everybody was given their own journal to write in after they have the meetings and if they want to elaborate or create. But what we also did was we put out what we called a collective journal. And this was the second phase of this program. It's very organic. There may be another phase, so I'll keep you posted. But the second phase was a collective journal where there's a prompt that is put in the journal, and then people respond to the prompt, and participants are invited, and they know that others in the house are going to read their entries, and they then can read them and comment on their entries. And so it creates an interactive journal. And Amber just sent me yesterday, because we just kind of started this, and she said some of the responses that the participants were sharing from the collective journal activity. I feel support. I feel loved. I'm not alone. And I know. And so it was an opportunity. Now, their own journals are personal, but the collective journal is just that, collective. And again, it's another way of focusing on community, relationships. And yet, I will say this, none of this work that I do with individuals, no matter what environment, whether it be a school, whether it be with Willow, a business, nothing that I do, and I know nothing that your staff does, happens without first establishing an incredible foundation of trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see how important that is for an activity like this. And Sarah, what I love about it is that it's so simple,
Oh,
but
it's
it's
so simple.
so powerful. And it so ties into the theory that you laid out for us. It's
Yeah,
building trust, it's building beliefs. It's just day by day adding to someone's self-efficacy and
totally.
self-esteem.
Totally. And, you know, it's really important to understand that difference between going and addressing something from a strengths-based perspective versus a deficit-based perspective. Someone could say, oh, these women were engaged in human trafficking. What's going to happen? They're not going to amount to anything. They're going to be traumatized. They're going to be this. Or you can say, what is it that even has made them get this far?
Mm-hmm.
It's the questions you ask, the way you ask a question. And we really need to be cognizant of the questions that we ask so as to reframe our work with a strengths-based perspective. And then that allows the individual to be strengths-based. You know, I always go back to, you go to the Holocaust, and how do we refer to the people, and how do they refer to themselves? Survivors. You never hear of someone from the Holocaust saying a victim of the Holocaust. You always hear a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Framing.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to point out that you helped us do, whenever a survivor comes into the Willow program, they meet with a case manager, and that case manager builds a case plan. And I remember we walked you through this and said, Sarah, help us make this strength-based. Help us incorporate what you've taught us into the work that we do. And what we realized is that this case plan, it was looking at all of the areas they were lacking in.
Yeah.
And that's important. We have to meet their needs.
Right.
We have to look at their health. What are their healthcare needs? What are their economic needs? What's their family needs? But you allowed us to look at this in a new light, to also ask them what their resources are.
Yeah.
What are their strengths? Yeah. So that they're not overwhelmed by how much need they have. They're able to identify from the very first day that they meet with the case manager, yep, all of this horrific stuff has happened to me, but you know, I do have this one auntie who loves me and who supports me. I'm going to reach out to her. Or, you know, all of this happened, but my health is okay. And so I'm not weak. I'm not lacking in that area. So I'm going to use my strength to get a job in this field or to get this kind of work.
And you know, Kelsey, you bring up a really, really important point that I want to make. I am not against saying trauma. I am not against the word victim. What I'm advocating is that we put them in their proper perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, I like to think about what people experience as their lived experience. And tell me about your lived experience, because you can have a lived experience and I can have the lived experience. For you having that same lived experience, it could lead to trauma. For me, having that lived experience, it made me, you know, want to really say, okay, I'm going to, you know, do this and find my strengths. So I like to start with lived experiences. So it's a strength-based. The other thing I will say is that we really have to give permission to people to say the story and label themselves without us labeling them.
Yes, that is so true.
So I'm not against, I mean, I think the system does create victims.
Hmm.
The system does. And yet, as they engage, they're able to get the self-efficacy. And it's not that it's up to them to find their strengths. It's up to us. It's incumbent upon us to support them and help them find it. We're not putting more on the quote victim, if you want to use those words, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't want to victimize them twice, as we say.
Exactly. The last thing a survivor needs is to be re-victimized
Exactly.
by a system that's supposed to be there to support them.
Exactly.
I just want to alert our audience, if you have questions for Sara, now is the time to start, or comments, to start sharing those in the chat function, so that we make sure to get to any questions that you have for her. One thing that I did want to ask you, Sara, for our audience, you've done work, you've touched on it briefly, with businesses, with schools, with nonprofits, and you speak to a lot of different audiences. What about resilience, if you haven't already shared? Would you like to share with our audience today?
Thank you for asking that question. I really appreciate that question. When I talk about resilience, and I said it earlier, but I always say, if you got nothing else from anything I talked about, nothing else, this is the most important. There are actually two things that I would share. One is, resilience is a process, not a trait. Resilience is a process, and it's not even linear. Sometimes, we all know, we have more resilience in this time than next time or that time, but it is not a trait. We do such a disservice if anybody thinks of resilience as a trait. The other thing, which again is the title of my book, Resilience Begins with Beliefs. Our beliefs are what influence the words we use, the activities we engage in, our behaviors, the way we interact. And we may think we're so evolved and we are doing this and that. The research on beliefs, because that's the other deep dive I did, the research shows that it's almost like the hidden beliefs that we have that are the shadow side, and that we have to recognize. So our beliefs really affect how we interact, and so resilience begins with beliefs.
Sara, for those listening who are mothers or educators or work with children, how do we begin? How do we help encourage that belief? What do we do?
Great question. What do you do? That was actually my dissertation question. That is a great question. What can you do? And I think what I have found works best is getting people to tell their stories, and then once people are telling their stories of hardship or trauma or a lived experience, and then you say, but look at you, what did you draw on that got you to where you are, that you could even share the story? And then they think, and they'll go, oh, well, and they'll start identifying things. Well, I guess I remember having this teacher that always believed in me or something, and it's taking the time. My dissertation was actually called Tell Me a Story. And it's taking the time to not just hear, but to listen, and listen deeply to each other's stories, and to reflect back to people with their stories and to start asking questions about their stories and what did they draw upon within themselves and outside to get them through their stories. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And it's, again, it's so like obvious and simple when you say it, that anyone can do this.
Yeah.
If a friend is telling you a story of something they went through, just to pause and reflect and to help them ask questions that help them to identify their own strengths and
Yes.
how they were able to get through it. And just by asking that question, you're subtly just acknowledging your belief in their capacity, your belief in their abilities. That's just, it's really, really powerful stuff,
Powerful.
Sarah.
And the other thing is, you don't have to fix everything. We're not there to fix. First of all, people aren't broken. Let's start with that premise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people aren't broken. We're not in the people fixing business. We're in there for compassion, for listening, for lifting. Awakening and lifting is what I say.
That's beautiful. And, you know, we have a couple comments here. People are loving your explanation of resilience, your examples. They love how you've pointed out compassion fatigue happens because we care. Not a weakness. It's
right.
It comes out of a place of strength and a place of goodness. Someone is saying that your conversations, this is Jennifer, it's how you met, was having conversations like this. So I love that. Our last question, to wrap this up, we're asking all of our panelists in the Lunch and Learn series, what gives you hope right now, Sarah?
Okay, I don't want this to sound trite, but what gives me hope is that the sun rises every day, or the sun shines. But that gives me hope. And I want to put that in the context. Every day is a new beginning. And what gives me hope is to know that there's a new day around the corner. And with that, we can allow ourselves to have grace with ourselves and with others, and recognize that maybe something happened one day, today, and we weren't the best self that we could be. Or maybe as a teacher, a child did something and they made a really icky decision. But our behaviors don't define who we are. And I used to say to my second graders, pretend you're a chalkboard. Well, there you go. I just aged myself. Pretend you're a whiteboard. Pretend you're a smart board, right? But pretend you're one of those boards people write on. Okay. And each day you may have done something that, you're not so proud of, but you know what? Each day you get to erase and start anew. The sun comes up. And it's a new day, a new beginning. And I think I put that in the context of hope, with how survivors can look at hope, how we as those who support others, whether it be children, survivors, or how we look at hope, that I hope I can do more tomorrow. I hope I can do something better. And again, hope and grace, I think, go hand in hand, giving ourselves forgiveness.
Well, that means so much to me. As a new mom,
Yeah,
I've really been clinging to that. The sleep yesterday did not go so well, but today is a new day and we start over.
Totally. And I just think that we all have to embrace that. embrace it. And that's what gives me hope that it's, and even now with the COVID and this, every day there's something new to hear, to learn. There are setbacks, but there are also things that move forward. You give me hope, Kelsey. What gives you hope? You give me so much hope.
Well, you give me so much encouragement and so much belief in myself. I mean, if there is somebody who exemplifies helping people believe in themselves, that is you, Sara. You've done that for me. You've done that for the Willow team. You've done that for survivors and participants in our program. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for all that you've done leading up to this interview, for taking the time to be with us and to share your lived experiences and your knowledge with us. And Sara, for just all that I know you're going to continue to do to help not just Willow, but you do a lot. You help so many different groups and people, and the world is just a better place because you are in it.
And I love sharing, and I think we're all in a place where we need to lift each other. And I really invite anybody to contact me, and I would share anything, with anybody about what I'm doing. And I really just think if we're all in it together, lifting humanity.
Well, thank you. We'll be sure to include your website on the resource page so people know how to reach out to you. And like I said in the beginning, go check out Sara's TED Talks, check out her book, Resilience Begins with Beliefs. And we thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, Sara.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, Lindsay, behind the scenes.
Bye, everyone.